What is happening, everybody? It is Trey here. I'm joined today by my dad, Sean, and today on Reactions to the Classics, we are going to be taking a look at the Beach Boys' Pet Sounds. This is a record that we wanted to do for a little while.
For a long time. We were going through the Beatles discography. Everybody told us we had to check this out. Well, here you go. We're finally here.
Yeah, exactly. This is the first time we've heard this record, so it was a treat to really dive in. And if this is your first time stopping by the channel, y'all, we really appreciate it here. Reactions to the Classics. We take a look back. Some of the most classic albums of all time, do a detailed track-by-track review of it. It's usually the first time we've heard the record, and we'd be sure to give it 7 to 10 plus listens to get familiar with it. So that sounds like something interesting to you. Be sure to hit that big red subscribe button. And if you'd like to link up with us further, we have our Facebook page, as well as our Patreon down below, where you can get some exclusive videos and perks yourself. And all that to say, let's just get into some quick facts.
Let's do it. 11th studio album for the Beach Boys, released in May of 1966. This thing is number 2 on the Rolling Stones top 500 albums of all time. It cost a then unheard of $70,000. It's about $500,000 in today's money. Took 10 months to record. It peaked at number 10 in the US, number 2 in the UK. It was over way more in the UK. But Trey never really had a lot of commercial success. This is an album that years later, decades later, it's seen for what it really was, which was a masterpiece. But at the time, it wasn't considered a success. This was produced, arranged, and mainly composed by Brian Wilson, the then leader of the Beach Boys. He kind of went in and out of that role over time. He had some mental health issues. Lyrics mainly by Tony Asher. Brian did some of them. Recorded between January and April of 1966, mainly. Brian was suffering from some mental health issues, had a breakdown on a plane on the way home from a tour. So he had stopped touring so he could just concentrate on studio stuff, which is why we have this masterpiece.
Yeah, and Wilson actually went into the production of this wanting to make the greatest rock album ever made with no filler tracks. He definitely utilized Phil Spector's wall of sound technique.
He did.
Expanded upon that, and then came out with Good Vibrations, often regarded as one of the best songs of all time, out in October. So this was definitely a prolific time in Wilson's career, and this is regarded by many musicologists as an early concept album. It advanced the field of music production. It introduced non-standard harmonies and incorporated elements of pop, jazz, classical, exotica, and the avant-garde.
Well, Trey, there's several things that helped Brian put this album together. One of those things he mentions, during early 1965, he took LSD for the first time, said it gave him this religious experience, that he can't really explain it, and he started smoking high amounts of marijuana. He said, I wrote this album mainly on marijuana. He meets a guy named Tony Asher at a party. Tony's only 26 years old. He's writing ad copies. Brian hears after he meets him at the party that he's really good with words, so he calls him up because Brian wanted to write with somebody that he never wrote with before, totally different experience. The rest of the Beach Boys are off touring, so Brian's there alone anyway. They get together for about 3 weeks, and that's how they wrote the lyrics to Pet Sounds. One of the other things that really inspired Brian, Beatles album Rubber Soul, he listened to it, he's impressed with the no filler tracks, he wanted to make a complete statement. He said, I didn't want to copy the album, I just wanted to take what they did and kind of run with it and improve on it. Interestingly enough, McCartney mentioned this album for his inspiration to do Sgt. Pepper's.
Wilson also wanting to pay homage and expand Phil Spector's wall of sound techniques. He's noted that in one sense of the word, the Beach Boys were his messengers. If you take the Pet Sounds album as a collection of art pieces, each designed to stand alone, yet which belong together, you'll see what I was aiming at.
This is thought of often as a Brian Wilson solo project. When they came back from tour and Brian started playing this out for him, there is some issues with him. Mike Love had issues. He'll later on say he didn't. Many people there say he did, whatever. One of the main issues was you can't play these songs live, Trey, because they're produced so highly.
So many instruments.
Yeah. So, I mean, you got to think for the Beach Boys, for the guys minus Brian, they're going out going, I can't really play any of these songs live. Wilson conceived of his experimental arrangements that combined conventional rock setups with various exotic instruments, producing new sounds with a rich texture reminiscent of symphonic works layered underneath meticulous vocal harmonies. In total, the number of unique instruments that were used for each track averaged to be almost a dozen. Many of those weren't ever used in rock music, including a glockenspiel, a ukulele, an accordion, electric theremin, bongos, harpsichord, cello, trombone, Coca-Cola bottles, and other odd sounds.
This has everything in the kitchen sink.
It's unbelievable. It's like, whatever, yeah, let's throw that in there.
And he produced several backing tracks over a period of months with the Wrecking Crew. It was a orchestra that was used in Phil Spector's.
Yes, the top flight LA guys, yeah, and they were the ones that recreated a lot of the Wall of Sound on other albums.
And some tapes that survived from these sessions that showed that Wilson was actually pretty open to the Wrecking Crew's ideas.
One of the most difficult things, Trey, is the Beach Boys rarely ever knew their parts when they came into the studio, and they didn't even get to rehearse. Brian just said, let's go. And at that time, he was using up to 6 of the 8 tracks on the multi-track master so he could record the voice of each member separately, which was really pivotal to give him that sound. It allowed him greater control over the vocal balance in that final mix. After he mixed down the 4-track to mono for overdubbing via an 8-track recorder, 6 of the 7 remaining tracks were usually dedicated to each of the Beach Boys vocals. All that's important, guys. All that's recording speak. But it's important because when you hear this album and hear all the richness to it, it wouldn't have been possible without all this technical side that Brian understood quite well. We're going to start out with Wouldn't It Be Nice, which was written by Wilson, Asher, and Mike Love. Added a few lyrics in there. We're going to get into that whole story in our Digging Deeper for our Patreon people. This is the only song I was familiar with. Yes, I know a lot of Beach Boys songs. No, I didn't know any of these other ones. It really starts the album out with a whole different tone because in the past, the Beach Boys, a lot of good fun, teen stuff, all this stuff. Now it's Wouldn't It Be Nice to Be Older? You got to wait. Wouldn't it be nice to not have to wait to do this, to lay down together at night, wake up together, all those things. So he really set a different tone. Uses the Wall of Sound immediately. You tell this thing has a different sound. And guys, you got to listen to this with headphones because you really get a whole idea of this album on a different level on headphones.
Oh, and I really enjoyed this track. I wasn't familiar with any of these songs, and it just sets the tone of the album, I think, both in production and lyrically and thematically at a great sense. You don't hear a lot of songs, especially in the mid-'60s, like what you were talking about I can't wait to get older, but it's something I think a lot of teens, kids, and even people my age, young adults, think about. One of the lines I thought was really great is, it seems the more we talk about it, it only makes it worse to live without it, but let's talk about it. The harmony vocals on this entire record were unbelievable.
They were.
And you can really tell that in this track, so what an absolute banger to start us off. You Still Believe in Me is the next track. Wilson is the lyricist on this as well as the lead vocalist. There's a lot of unique instrumentation in here. You have a clarinet, harpsichord, a bicycle horn. Brian explained that this was almost like a little boys choir type of song.
I liked it. It wasn't one of my favorites on here. This album is absolutely tremendous. So for me, coming off Wouldn't It Be Nice, it's down a little bit for me, but it's still a really good song. And the way they created it, it just shows you, it's a lab for Brian, man.
Yeah.
But they're opening up the piano with Ash. It's tremendous.
Yeah, the starting lyrics, I know perfectly well, I'm not where I should be. And then he later mentions, after all I've done to you, how can it be you still believe in me? Just sets up, again, some advanced lyrics, I think, in the mid-'60s. He's failing his lover almost by failing himself, but she's still there, and he's asking her, are you still going to believe in me? So I think that the themes here that are dealt out in this record really hit home with me. Maybe it's just the point of where I'm at in my life, but and just the dreamy music surrounding it made it a very hit track.
All right, next up is That's Not Me, written by Brian and Asher. This was directly influenced by Brian doing the psychedelic drugs, the LSD, that kind of stuff. It caused him to look within himself. Mike Love is singing the vocal on this. This sounds, the only one on here, Trey, it's like a conventional Beach Boys rock song. It sounds like the traditional Beach Boys. It really worked for me.
Yeah, and going back to that, this is the only track where all the instruments are just played by the Beach Boys.
That's right, yeah.
So I think that this, again, went with the independence type of theme that we've already seen in the first 3 songs. I really enjoyed this track too. I was impressed with it. Didn't hit the highs, I don't think, as the first 2 songs, just for me personally, but I still loved it. Don't Talk, Put Your Head on My Shoulder is the next track. This is one of only 3 tracks on the record where Brian's the only Beach Boy on the song, and this is unique in the Beach Boy catalog as it features no backing vocals.
Yes.
He mentioned that this was one of the sweetest vocal performances he ever performed, and I'd have to agree with him.
Yeah, I like it. It's a real melancholy song. I think it is interesting that we went from, a song where the Beach Boys, it's a traditional song in the last song, and you know, they're the only ones playing the instruments, and now he's the only one there, and there's no backing vocals. It's like the exact opposite.
Yeah.
Shows you that what he's trying to do on this album, which is just flip the script and do whatever he feels like doing, which is tremendous results. Next up is I'm Waiting for the Day. This was written by Brian only, and it basically is a love poem. The narrator's telling it from his perspective. He's trying to comfort and support a girl whose heart was broken by somebody else. The arrangement has jazz chords, doo-wop progression, English horns, flute, string section. Brian didn't like his performance though vocally. He said that's the one I would throw off. He goes, the song works, it's really, really sweet is what he said. But he said, I don't like my vocal performance. I thought he sounds fine.
Oh yeah, I thought this was another fantastic track. I'm a broken record here, and again, I really enjoyed the theme on this about, hey, there's a lover, you know, his lover's out there. She's still caught up on this ex, but eventually
she's gonna come to me.
Yeah, exactly. She's gonna come to me, and he's just gotta be patient. Sometimes we just gotta be patient.
Yeah, we gotta play the friend,
with
man,
our
and then
crush,
wait,
yeah.
and then like swoop in once they're over it. Yeah, exactly.
Then we go to Let's Go Away for a While. This is one of two instrumentals on this record. This was composed by Brian. Intended to have a lead vocal, but Wilson decided it didn't need one. He called it his favorite instrumental that he ever wrote, and he used a ton of musicians on this. We have 12 violins, a piano, 4 saxes, an oboe, vibes, a guitar with a Coke bottle on the string, 2 basses, and a percussion. I really enjoyed the brass sections of the song. Made it feel epic against the dreamy, you know, soundscape in the background. So I like this instrumental more than the other one.
Yeah, I like this one fine. It was weird the first time I listened to it because I don't do the research first. I listened to it once, and so when it was an instrumental, I thought, that's odd. But no, it's fine for me, and it builds into 2 songs that are greatness. Sloop John B, which is a Bahamian folk song all the way back from 1916. Brian produced and arranged it, served it as the lead single from this album. It peaked at 3 in the US, 2 in the UK. This thing's 276 on the Rolling Stones 500 greatest songs of all time. It contains this elaborate a cappella vocal section not found in pop music of the era. Al Jardine loved folk music, so he's the one that suggested. Al Jardine's part of the Beach Boys at this time. He suggested to Brian, we should record this, and Brian, okay. Then a few days later he came in and Brian had worked this whole thing up. I learned that a sloop is a sailboat. I did not know that. Trey, I'd never heard this song. I know it's a famous song. I'd never heard it. I love this song.
Oh yeah.
After I listened to the album 15 times, I listened to this song on repeat. This is my favorite. I know the next song is the most acclaimed, but this one is my favorite.
Yeah, this would be one of my top, I think, 3 on the record. What a fantastic track. And again, I'm a big lyrics guy. I love diving into the themes. I found it interesting that we had a more joyous musical backing with some actual melancholy lyrics. He describes that he feels so broke up and he wants to go home. I want to go home. That's a refrain that you hear throughout the song. And that's almost I think a defining line that could be for Pet Sounds in general. A lot of the themes that we have here about longing, isolation, alienation, feeling different from everybody, and longing for something else that you don't have is almost summed up in this track. So
yeah, and that's why even though he didn't write it, it fits perfectly for all those reasons you said. I mean, in the context of the song, he's working on the boat. It's a hard life. He wants off of there. I just want to go home. Just let me get out of here. And all the little adventures they go on that don't turn out the right way. So yeah, it works perfectly on this album. And like I said, sneak peek, it's my favorite.
Then we get into God Only Knows to start the B-side. Wow, what a fantastic track.
Yes.
It was the B-side actually to Wouldn't It Be Nice in the United States. Ranked number 25 on the Rolling Stones top 500 greatest songs of all time. And the song's unique in the fact that it names God in the title, which was unusual for a pop single at the time. And the sentiments expressed in the lyrics are not specific to any god, but could be addressed to any higher force, being a song about moving forward after loss, told from the point of view of someone contemplating life without their lover.
Wilson said him and Asher's intention was to create the feeling of being blind. In being blind, you can see more. Carl Wilson actually sung this one, Trey. Brian had originally wanted to do it, but he thought it was more suited for Carl's voice. Brian's wife, Marilyn, during this time was very nervous about them using God when he brought it to her. And he didn't want to do it. He said, it's never going to get played. But then he decided, I want to be cutting edge, so we'll use God in the title.
Yeah, and wow, just, I mean, the outro is just phenomenal with the God only knows, and it just kind of keeps echoing from the other members.
Yeah.
Harmonies here are just next level, some of the best you're ever gonna hear. There's a section in here, you should ever leave me, the life would still go on, believe me. The world could show nothing to me, so what good would living do me? Just very poignant lyrics that just, you know, hit you right in the feels, thinking about a guy, you know, that loves somebody so much. If she's gone, what would the use be? I can't live without you, you know, essentially. So, fantastic song.
Next up we have I Know There's an Answer, composed and produced by Brian with a lyrical collaboration with their road manager for the Beach Boys, Terry Satchin and Mike Love. This was written as a reaction to Brian's experience with LSD, characterized by its unusual juxtaposition of instrumentation, Trey, and that unfolds as the song progresses. It includes tack piano, bass harmonica, banjos, saxes, flutes, and organ. The brass section is really strong. As they were in the recording process, Mike Love had a problem with the original lyric.
There was conflicts that were brewing. Love thought it was too much of a doper song. His words, the song's original title was Hang On to Your Ego, and so they made a compromise, changing to I Know There's an Answer, and more about just finding yourself
instead of the, but there is still some drug references in the song. Mike didn't take them all out, but he took out some of them.
So they came to a good little compromise here, and I'm glad for it, because it's another fantastic track.
Next up we have Here Today, written by Brian and Asher, and the subject of this song is basically warning you, don't fall in love because you know it's just going to end badly. One of the things that's really good that Brian did with this is the song structure. It reminds me of some Beatles songs where it just starts. It's a very good way to change things up on this album. Every song is a different musical journey, and he uses this tactic on this song.
Oh, absolutely. And again, great theme here. It talks about when you're in that honeymoon phase where you really love somebody.
Oh yeah, everything's gonna be great, right? It's all roses, man.
Yeah, you think, oh, this isn't gonna ever end in heartbreak, and then the lyrics break down as the song goes on. Well, you're not thinking about this or that or that, you know. Essentially, the question people got to ask themselves is love worth the potential pain that it could bring? So this was one of my favorite songs on the entire record. I just loved it. Thought the music itself was just very catchy, and I enjoyed it. I Just Wasn't Made for These Times is up next, again written by Brian and Tony Asher, and this is about social alienation. Essentially, Brian Wilson said this is about a guy who's crying out because he's different from the rest of the world. He said his friends all thought he was crazy for doing pet sounds, hence the title, I Just Wasn't Made for These Times. There's a Spanish backing chorus in there. It's translated, when will I be? One day I will be. And like other songs on the album, there's no drum kit until the chorus.
Wilson stated in his autobiography that this was kind of a song he wrote from his own perspective because he felt like he had surpassed the other people around him. I don't think he meant that as an arrogant thing at all. I think that he was just seeing music at such a level, Trey, that hardly anybody else was. So the Beach Boys come back from their concert tour, like we talked, they come in the studio. He sees this thing at like 12 different levels, and they're like, what is this? We don't do it like this. We do it real simple. So kind of sad because, you know, Brian's battled mental illness all his life, still battling it right now in 2019 when we filmed this. So I thought this song took on special meaning because of the fact that he wrote it from his own perspective.
There's also an interesting note saying that he knows he wants to change in a sense, but he needs somebody to help him along and guide him through the process, but it doesn't look like anybody's there. So how often in life do we wish somebody would just pick up the phone, call us? So you're watching this and you want to make a phone call to somebody, man. Pick up that phone and you know, reach out to your loved ones, family, friends. If you think they're going through a tough time, I'm sure they would appreciate that call, as Brian would have during this time as well. But what a fantastic song yet again, one of my favorites on this record.
Takes us up to the title track, the second instrumental, Pet Sounds. It was originally called Run James Run. Brian wrote it and composed it. He wrote it because he wanted it to be the James Bond theme. It didn't make it as the Bond theme, so he brought it into this, made it the title track. You know, it's fine. I don't like it as well as the other instrumental.
Same.
But it leads into the final song, which is also highly acclaimed.
Yeah, Caroline, No. This is ranked 214th on the Rolling Stones top 500 songs of all time, again written by Wilson and Asher. It marked Wilson's solo debut when released as a single in March of '66, peaking at number 32. After Wilson produced this recording, he sped it up a semitone to make his voice sound younger. When the song reappeared on Pet Sounds, he added recordings of his two dogs barking and a train going by at the end to, give us the only pet sounds of the entire record. I felt a little duped until I heard that.
Yeah, no joke, but it's a great way to close it. I like this song a lot. It's got an interesting story behind it we don't have time to get into, but if you watch our Digging Deeper, if you're a Patreon, I'll give you the whole story on that, which is quite interesting.
Wraps up the record thematically in a great way, because essentially this girl, Caroline, she has lost her innocence and is...
She's changed,
yeah,
right?
Exactly. And at the end, he asked her, will you able to get back the things that you used to love or made me love you? And the ending thing, Caroline, no. So I think all the experiences that Wilson was going through and that are delved out and themes throughout this entire record, they eventually will change you. You're never going to be the person you once were, a year or 5 years ago. But that doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad thing. You've just learned and grown from it. And I think it's an apropos way to end the record, and that'll take us to our favorite tracks. I'm going to say this track, Caroline, No. God Only Knows would be my favorite. Sloop John B. in Here Today.
Me, Sloop John B., God Only Knows, and Wouldn't It Be Nice. Now, I will say this. If you listen to this thing on Spotify, I'm sure Apple Music's the same way, but I use Spotify. You're going to have the mono version followed by the stereo version. I listened to both of them several times. I actually prefer the stereo version, but make sure you check out both. Trey, this brings us to our overall grade. We talk about this sometimes. Very difficult because we can't rewind to 1966 and listen to it and go, wow, this stuff is cutting edge. But this stuff doesn't exist nowadays in music, so it really was cutting edge. Brian was a genius, as you mentioned. He really was a genius. He saw things at a different level at only 24 years old. So for me, this album is a 9.5. You could probably talk me into a 9.75. I'm going to go with a 9.5, but it is different than anything I've ever heard. There's no doubt about that, and different in a good way. It does give me a different perspective on the Beach Boys, because growing up, I just thought of the Beach Boys when I hear their song. They weren't popular at the time, or just a surfing away, kind of a throwaway band, and this taught me a different lesson, at least in this aspect of their tenure.
I'm going to be at a 9.75 on this. I just think when you take into account both lyrics, themes, obviously production, instrumentation, it just makes for a great record. There's something here, I think, for everybody. And just so many different little nuances, and just the influence it had, I had to bump it up just a little bit as well. So fantastic record, and let us know what you think of Pet Sounds down below in the comments. Let us know your favorite track, and as always, Dad, really appreciate it. I know this was a monster to research.
This was a monster to research. It's fun, though. I learned a lot.
Yeah, so if you enjoyed this video, y'all, be sure to hit that big red subscribe button. We upload multiple times a week in a variety of genres, and until next time, thank you guys so much for watching. Happy listening, my friends, and we will see ya.